Benevolence and righteousness are good, right? Well, if we read chapter 18 of the world-famous Tao Te Ching carefully, we might think a bit otherwise. If you want to find out more, just keep on watching. When the Tao is abandoned, benevolence and righteousness arise. When wisdom and knowledge emerge, hypocrisy and falsehood arise. When family ties are disturbed, obedience and kindness arise. When the country falls into chaos, loyal ministers arise. So everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to look at chapter 18 of the famous Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. So, when the Tao is abandoned, benevolence and righteousness arise. Well, for this chapter, you have to understand that we have a high bar that is set here by Lao Tzu. Because Lao Tzu is saying that when the great Tao is not that which is in charge, which is basically the normal state of this world, benevolence and righteousness arise. When you hear that, at first you might think benevolence and righteousness, those are good things, right? So what is the problem? But, well, it goes a bit deeper than that. It means that because of you don't have the real Tao, and the Tao is something that can be felt by the sages, right? So the sages know the way of the Tao. They dedicate themselves into the Wu-Wei state, which means that they just go with the flow. They directly live out of their hearts. They don't think. They don't have concepts in their mind. They live as life is supposed to be lived. So, and this state is lost here. Okay, so basically it is saying when the Tao is abandoned, that means when the people have lost their own compass, their own feeling of what is right. Okay, that is what is lost. The people are lost themselves. They don't know what is right and wrong anymore. Because the Tao is lost. The Wu-Wei is lost, okay? So, and that's why, in order to still be able to organize the world in some way, you need benevolence and you need righteousness, okay? Which are ways in which the life is organized, in which those are rules, those are ideas, the idea of being benevolent and the idea of being righteous. That is something which inside of a Tao state is the most basic thing. Okay, nobody who's living the true Tao would have to think about what is righteous or what is benevolent, because if you live the Tao directly, that is how you are. And even better, okay? So you don't need the ideas. But here it is said that when the Tao is abandoned, when that is lost, the people have lost it, then you need the ideas of benevolence and righteousness to organize a society. Okay, that is what is meant here. So benevolence and righteousness are crutches, are kind of a scaffolding you need to keep society going in a relatively good way, okay? But if you have a society which is in a state of the Tao, you don't need that at all, because that's, yeah, just how things are normally. So let's go on. When wisdom and knowledge emerge, hypocrisy and falsehood arise. So, and this is kind of the problem, because like I said earlier, benevolence and righteousness are then ideas, scaffoldings for the mind, rules for the mind to follow. Okay. But if that's the case, if you have started following the mind, wisdom and knowledge emerges. So wisdom and knowledge emerge. So there is kind of a mind realm emerging up here instead of the true Tao, which is living like nature is supposed to live. And so that arises, then you have an own realm of mind, of thought up here, of rules. And then hypocrisy and falsehood arise. Okay, because hypocrisy and falsehood, well, they can only be seen when there are rules to follow. Okay, because to be a hypocrite, you have to be able to say, well, I'm following the rules very good, I'm a good person. But, well, in case of a hypocrite, that's not true. And falsehood is also emerging because like people try to act if they do, but they don't, and then they try to sneak out advantages for themselves, stuff like that. So once you've started this mind game, inside of that mind game, things can go wrong and things can go crooked and well, actually everybody goes downhill, or everything goes downhill when you start putting too much energy into the mind realm. Okay, because then you confuse your thoughts with reality. You confuse your thoughts or your rules with the true Tao. But the true Tao only can be felt. So that's a problem with all those old traditions, that in the end you can read as much as you want, but if you only understand it here, nothing will change. You have to live out from here, right from your heart, to be able to bring the wisdom into the life. And then you're part of the true Tao. And then you won't be a hypocrite, because then you just live what you say. Okay? So that's that. The next one is interesting too. When family ties are disturbed, obedience and kindness arise. Okay, so family ties, of course, are basically a natural thing. The love between siblings, the love between parents and their children, the love to your grandparents, all that is, in the state of the Tao, a natural thing. You don't have to think about that. Same game as before. But when this Tao of the family is not lived, not properly lived, you need to set up rules. And those rules are, the children in the old Chinese society, they had to be xiao. That's the Chinese word. Xiao means being obedient. Filial piety is another translation. So they had to follow the orders and the wishes of their elders. But that is not the same as living with the Tao, okay? Of course not. Living with the Tao doesn't mean you become a slave of your parents. That's not, well, it's not the point. Because following and love is not always the same, right? Sometimes it has to be the expression of love that you don't follow someone, that you say, I'm sorry, in this case, I think you're wrong. And that can be an expression of true love, right? So obedience and kindness, and those two are like, in the Chinese characters are like xiao is a character for the child, so children had to be obedient, and this kindness is that character used in the Chinese is dedicated to parents. So the kindness from parents toward their children, that is what is meant here. So those ideas emerge when the Tao is lost, when the Tao of the family is lost. Okay. And then the last two lines. When the country falls into chaos, loyal ministers arise. Okay, again, same picture, same game. The country falls into chaos. The country has lost the Tao. So now it is the time to find loyal ministers who do the right thing. Okay, so you have to organize that from a mind perspective, because the true way, the Wu way, is lost. And this whole chapter, it's pretty interesting because all these ideas of the right thing you can find in Confucianism. And following the legend, Confucius was a student of Lao Tzu. So Confucianism is kind of the child of Taoism. And it's interesting when you look at it that way, because like Lao Tzu was teaching that the great Tao basically was lost. Like the normal people did not know the Tao anymore. So he tried, with his Tao Te Ching, he tried to bring that message back to the people. And now Confucius went kind of following this chapter 18 here. Confucius went like one step down from that and saying, okay, that's the case, the Tao is lost, but most people won't find the Tao, so we have to organize them in some way. And Confucius came up with all these ideas of hierarchies inside a family, of obedience, of kindness, of benevolence and righteousness. So Confucius put those rules at the top of his philosophy for the normal people to follow, to have a chance of kind of narrowing down on, in the end, the Tao. But it seems to me like Confucius did not even dare to think that all people would be able to reach that state of the Tao. So he set up all those rules to kind of, keep everything organized. Okay. So I think that's a pretty interesting background to know to this chapter 18. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you join me again for more content about ancient Chinese wisdom. And like and subscribe if you want, and I'll be back with chapter 19. See you soon. Bye-bye.